What's up everyone, welcome to Workshop Rebuild. Right behind me here is my newest addition, the John Deere 332 garden tractor, and in today's video I'll give you guys a quick walk around. The first thing that I will do is I'll give you a 360 view on this garden tractor that I have right in front of me. I'll open up the hood and then remove two side panels around the engine to share with you guys everything that's involved within the drivetrain. The first thing that you will notice on the front of the tractor is this nice little grille, as well as the headlight lens, which is embedded inside of the hood. Now right over here, the grille is still made of metal. Even though this is a 1989 model, they have a metal grille. Some of the newer models that came after this actually had plastic grills, but they weren't the 300 series garden tractors. Now down below, you'll also see this diesel emblem. This is hooked up to the metal grille itself, and that's the best giveaway for this tractor because this is a diesel garden tractor. Another thing you will notice on the front of the tractor, we have exactly 4 hydraulic couplings, 2 to the left and 2 to the right. What that means is we have exactly 2 hydraulic spools on this garden tractor, which will operate one set of hydraulics up and down and the other side up and down. This will allow you to operate attachments with certain cylinders up front, like a plow or even a snowblower that has a function with a hydraulic cylinder. This will come in super handy in case I ever find any attachments for the front of this garden tractor. So on the front of the garden tractor, you'll also notice that the axle sticks out on either side of the frame. When we come down underneath of the frame, you'll notice the pivoting point of the axle is right there, right by that bolt and by the nut. And the pivoting point is right here. So as you can see, it will actually move up and down as you're driving over certain terrain. Now the axle is also holding the steering spindle. That's this part right here. And it comes all the way down and actually goes right into the wheel. The wheels themselves have bearings internally, and those bearings actually ride on that spindle right there. Now on either side of this tractor, it's basically the same, but just on the left side, you will notice the 332 garden tractor specifically, as well as the 318, they both have power steering options. So right here, the linkage for the power steering goes in and off to this rod, and that right there is our power steering cylinder. So this right here is the power steering cylinder, and you'll notice we have exactly 2 hydraulic lines coming to this cylinder and going off to the hydraulic valve block. If you guys are having issues with the power steering on your 332 or your 318, you guys can click the link up above because I already rebuilt one on the 855, which is a very similar setup to this garden tractor right here. So if you guys are interested, check that video out. So I just mentioned the power steering down below. Above the power steering, you'll also see an engine cover, which is right here. Above the engine cover, we also have the hood. It spans all the way from the front grille all the way to the dashboard, or right where our hydraulic levers are. So the hood is still in great condition. There is a little bit of cosmetic wear on the top. Obviously, some paint has been removed on the fiberglass from touching or rubbing up against something, but there's no serious damage on the fiberglass hood whatsoever. Over here, the fender, which is the back portion, spans all the way from the engine side panel all the way to the back of the tractor. This fender looks a little bit different than some of the earlier 300 series garden tractors. The fender itself is bent a little bit more sharp, and towards the back it actually cuts off. On the 317 it actually has a little radius towards the back, and we'll get there right now. So over here on the back of the tractor, you will notice we have a crease spanning all the way from left to right, and we have different taillights than on the 317 as well. The taillights are a little bit inside of the fender itself, and we also have these black plastic pieces which make it look a little bit more aggressive in my opinion. Over here you will notice the fender is a little bit more square than the 317. It actually almost makes a 90 right here. Down below you also see the rear wheels as well as the rear rims. These are exactly the same as any 300 series. They're also held in place by 5 bolts to the rear axles. And over here, the tread is still in great condition. It's actually really deep. It's over 1/2 inch. So these are basically like new. Sure, the sidewalls are kind of starting to crack right now, but I'm still happy with the wheels on the front and the back. The back ones are 23 10.5 by 12s, and the fronts are 16 6.5 by 8s. There's not really much to say about these tires or rims themselves. The tires are in great condition, and they also suit the overall appearance of this tractor in general. Now on the back of this fender, I did notice something a little bit different. The gas-based models, which are 318 and lower, have the opening on the fender off to the right, and you have to fill in gasoline. This John Deere garden tractor specifically has the fuel tank opening off to the left and it also has a red cap so you don't make a mistake and you only fill in diesel fuel. So that's another difference that I noticed, but that's also something specific just for diesel garden tractors. Now down below, you'll notice there was at one point probably a 3-point hitch on this garden tractor and possibly a PTO kit or some other attachments. As you can see, it has a top rocker shaft. That's this shaft that actually pivots on one point right here. So this shaft right here is the rock shaft for your 3-point hitch. And there are still these adjuster bars going down, but the lower arms that actually come from this point right here and hook up to that point right there, those would be the 2 lower points of the 3-point hitch, are non-existent on this garden tractor. Unfortunately, it does not have that. I will have to look and see if I can find something like that in the near future. And then the top link for a 3-point hitch would actually hook up right there. But even this setup right here is worth quite a bit of money, and hopefully I can find a 3-point hitch for this in the near future. Now down below, there's also this other bracket that comes out. From this point right here, you can actually slide in a bar, which would be your drawbar to pull any cart or something like that. So right now we're going to have a good look at the back of this tractor, or the rear end. Right in the middle we have the transmission, that's this part right here, and then off to the left and off to the right of the tractor you'll have 2 short axles. They span from right here to over there, but they also go into the transmission. Right back in here we will also have our brakes. So once you apply your brakes, your left and your right one, you will be braking on those hubs right there. Something which is really nice about these tractors, even though they're hydrostatic, they still have independent brakes on either side, so you can choose left or right, or even both together. Another thing I did notice, that this hose right here is actually black. This is your level of your hydraulic fluid within your rear end, and this also powers the rear end of your tractor. So this hose should actually be see-through so you can see the level, and the level should be anywhere between these 2 points right here. And since it's not see-through, I cannot see the level right now, so I will be changing this out for a clear hose. If you guys have any questions about this garden tractor, drop a comment down below and I'll reply to you as soon as I can. If the question is detailed enough, I might just even make a video about your question in the near future. I started in the front of this John Deere garden tractor and I worked my way back, but one thing I would like to discuss right now are all the features on this garden tractor, and that will be around the dash panel. This right here is a top-down view on the dashboard itself, and I'll share with you guys every detail that you need to know. On the top left, you will have your throttle lever. The bottom setting is low speed or your idle, and on the very top, you will have your full throttle setting. So just like that, that's full throttle. Bring it back down, that's your idle speed. Now in the middle, on the very top, you will notice this is a little bit more modern than any of the older 300 series garden tractors. We have indicator lights. This is very similar to the John Deere 55 I have, and these indicator lights will share with you guys the status throughout this garden tractor. So on the top left, you will have your oil pressure. The indicator light is red. This will tell you, once you turn over the key, that you will have oil pressure, but throughout the operation of the engine, this light will actually go off. If you ever see this indicator light come on while your engine is running, you better turn it off within a couple seconds. Now over here, you will see the battery charging. This will correspond with your alternator to let you know that your alternator is working correctly. Now over here, we also have our coolant temperature. Since this is a liquid cooled diesel engine, you will have your temperature, and you really want to make sure if this light comes on that you turn off your engine as well. This will mean your engine is overheating. Now over here, we also have a front, a mid, and a rear PTO setting. And one PTO is for our front and mid, and the other indicator light is also just for the rear. Now down below, you will notice we have exactly 2 switches for our PTO. On the John Deere 300, you actually only have 1, and on this tractor, you actually have 2. So your front PTO and your mid PTO are through 1 switch. So that's just like that. That's your front PTO and mid. And then this switch right here is just for your back. This one doesn't seem to work, so I might just have to fix that one right there. Once you turn on one of these switches, you should have a light come on your dash. Now over here, something that's a little bit more modern than the other 300 series that I have, you will have your fuel level indicator light. Once you're running low, that light will pop up. That means you want to fill it up with diesel fuel. Obviously, on a diesel engine, you really want to make sure that you're always filled up with fuel, or else once you run out on fuel, you will have to bleed your system again because you cannot have any air within your fuel management system. Now over here, one other thing that you will notice, these aren't your lights, these are glow plugs. This tractor, even though it's only 3-cylinder and very small, you also have glow plugs. So once that indicator light comes on, and I'll share that with you guys right here, once I turn the key on, you will see there's an orange light right there, and that will mean your glow plugs are actually working. So that's another very nice feature on this little garden tractor. Off to the right, which is on the very bottom right here, once you pull this, when your key is turned on, you will have your headlights turned on. Now off to the right, this is something that's very common throughout the 300 series and even some of the older 400 series. You will have your hand lever to actually go forward and backwards. Something that's really important, and if you ever want to start up this tractor and you think it's not going to start up because there's some issue, just make sure that your lever is always in neutral, because on the neutral position you have a switch right behind here, and if that's not touching that switch, you might not be able to start your tractor. But right here, once you pull this out to the right a little bit, you can go forward, and if you bring it all the way to the right and go backwards, your tractor will go in reverse. So I think I talked enough about the dash features. Now off to the left, you will also notice there are exactly 2 hydraulic levers. These levers will go into our valve spool, which is right behind the instrument panel right here. And you'll notice the left one is most likely for your left hydraulic setup, and your right lever is for your right hydraulic fittings, which are up front on the tractor. So once you pull this back, it should lift your blade or any other attachment, and once you lower it, it will lower your attachment up front. Same with the other hydraulic lever. I gave you guys enough information about this tractor in general. Now I'll open up the hood, share with you guys the drivetrain, and I'll also remove the side panels so we have a good view. With the side panels off to the side, I can now share with you guys all the information that I know about this engine right here. This right here is a 3-cylinder Yanmar diesel engine. The engine model is 3TN66UJ. So if you guys are looking for any parts for a replacement engine or anything in that matter, that's the model that you want to type in Google. So right here, I'll share with you guys everything from top to bottom and on both sides. On this engine right here, the intake is on the very top. The intake filter is housed in this housing. The intake goes all the way down into the intake manifold. That's this metal part right here. And the intake will then go into our cylinders. They are 3 tiny cylinders since this is a 3-cylinder engine. And we don't just need air, but we also need some fuel supplied to this engine so it will actually work. Our diesel fuel is pumped from this pump right down here. The diesel fuel actually goes all the way up and into this filter right here. This is our fuel filter. So if you guys are having a hard time starting up this engine, you might want to replace your old fuel filter right in here. Once the fuel is filtrated, it will go into our fuel pump. That's this part right here. And the fuel lines, which are hard lines, will actually supply fuel to all 3 diesel injectors right on top of the cylinder head. Now, if you guys have any air in your system, you might have to bleed that. So you can bleed the fuel pump right here, and you can also bleed the injectors on each fitting right down in here. Right behind the fuel pump, which actually ends right here on this cut, we have our governor. Since a tractor has a governor and it's always under load, the governor will allow the RPMs to regulate under load and keep it at that certain RPM that you have your setting at. So this right here, this contraption right behind the injection pump is the governor. And you will notice our throttle cable actually comes right up here and into the governor. The throttle is hooked up to the governor, which then regulates the fuel supply to the engine. Right underneath of the governor, you'll also notice this black cylindrical part. This right here is your engine oil filter. You always want to write down the hour number on your filter so you know exactly when to replace that. So the hour meter is right here. It says 724 hours. So in case you have an oil filter or you change it, write down your hour number right here, and then you'll know you want to replace that probably on this little garden tractor after 50 or 100 hours. There's one more thing to note on this side. Over here we have our dipstick. So the dipstick actually runs from right here all the way down into the oil pan, and you always want to check your oil periodically. So just check your oil before you even start it up, just to make sure that you have enough oil, because if you're running it without oil or you're low on oil, you might end up damaging your engine. I'm going to move over to the other side, which will be a little bit different. There's other components on this side, obviously. Over here we have the exhaust manifold that's right down there on the opposite side of the intake. Over here we have the exhaust itself, so that runs from the manifold and out of the side panel. This muffler is still in great condition. Most of the time on the very bottom of the exhaust it will be rusted out just from over the years, but this muffler is still in great condition, so I'm super happy with that. Since this engine is kind of placed in here backwards, you will have your belts running towards your instrument panel, which is this right here. And on the front of the engine, you will have your battery. In some of the gasoline versions, the battery will actually be right here and your engine is actually stuffed towards the front. This diesel engine right here is kind of flipped around. Your belts are towards you and the radiator is even stuffed right in the dash or right behind the dash. And especially in this area right here, since it's actually drawing in air through the radiator onto the engine, you always want to make sure that your radiator is clean. And obviously, as you can see, it's not something easy to get to because the radiator is right here and there's a whole bunch of panels around it. So that's something you want to take in consideration. If you want this engine to last a long time, check your oil, check your coolant, and also check to make sure that your radiator is clean so it can also cool properly. That's another thing that you really want to make sure that you do. Now, a little bit further down and closer to you is also the alternator. This is a tiny alternator. I find it really funny because there's actually just two tiny wires coming off of it. So this is a tiny alternator. It just probably supplies the battery with just enough juice, even though this battery is actually a small one for this diesel engine. It actually starts this engine without any issues. So a very small alternator right there. And you also want to check your belt to make sure your tension is on point, but also that your belt is also in great condition. Below the alternator and the muffler, you'll also notice your starter. So this is your starter motor right here. If you're having troubles, if it's clicking, you're obviously not getting enough voltage. But if this starter right here doesn't sound well, or it doesn't engage or disengage properly, if you hear actually even a grinding noise as your engine is running, it might be because of your starter. It's actually not disengaging. So that's another thing you might want to check right there. And other than that, there's not many components on this side of the engine. We do have the wiring harness coming into here, and there's a little module right down here. So you also want to check that module to make sure that everything is still in great condition and none of these connectors are fully rusted out, because it is a very low point on this side of the tractor. I just gave you guys a bunch of information of this Yanmar diesel engine that's actually stuffed into this John Deere 332. If all your filters and your fluids are topped off, I really think you shouldn't have an issue with this engine because it is very bulletproof. I've seen some of these tractors actually run all the way up to 4,000 hours without issues, but you do have to check your fluids. So take that in consideration. Right now I'm going to add the panels back onto this tractor and I'm going to start it up for you and give you guys a quick walk around.